Welcome, everyone, and I'm very glad that you could join us today. My name is Meg Adams, and I'm the Central Regional Coordinator of the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office. I will be the host and question moderator for today's webinar, a conversation about curating digital conversations. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll answer them throughout the webinar. Today's presenters are Chris Marshall, who is the Digital Collections Coordinator of the Indiana Division at the Indiana State Library, and Brittany Kropf, who is the Rare Books and Manuscripts Librarian of the Manuscripts Division at the Indiana State Library. Welcome, Chris and Brittany. Just a little reminder, after this webinar has been transcribed, it will be available on the Indiana State's Library Archived Webinars page. If you are watching an archived recording of this presentation, information on how to obtain your LEU in the video's description will be in YouTube. For weekly updates on upcoming trainings and to learn more about what's happening in libraries across the state, please subscribe to the Indiana State Library's e-newsletter, The Wednesday Word, and check out our continuing education website for professional development opportunities. So let's get started. Thank you so much for being with us today, Chris and Brittany. I'll hand the presentation over to you.
All righty. Thank you, Megan. Well, welcome to everybody. I was watching the list of participants, the number go up. It was like watching the thermometer go up. Oh, now it's up to 100, which is what it's going to be here in just a little few days. Well, we'd like to welcome you all. Just to start out, this was a question that I got from a program that I did a couple of years ago. When I just kind of did a general overview of the digital collections for the Indiana State Library, somebody at the very end asked, how do you go about selecting materials? And so I was like, that is a good question, and I will just leave that for another program. So anyway, as Megan said, I'm Chris Marshall. I'm the head of the digital collections for the Indiana division. I also oversee Indiana Memory. Now I'm the coordinator for that. And Brittany?
Well, I'm also, I administer the Indiana State Library's own digital collections too. And then I'm also the coordinator for the Manuscripts division itself. So
yeah, you're like my checks and balances. I send her stuff to approve, and then she finds all the mistakes I make, and then she corrects it, never tells me, and I keep on making it. So
consistent.
Only when I'm consistent. Okay, good. So anyway, yeah, so I started thinking about that question about how do we select materials for our digital collections, and we decided to put together a program to talk about a conversation about curating digital collections. So I use the word conversation, so if you do have questions, after each slide, just put it in the box, and eventually we'll get to all of them. If we don't, our emails are at the end of the PowerPoint, so you can write those down. You can find us on the internet. We're all librarians. We can do good internet searches and track each other down if we need to. So let's get started. So a conversation about curating digital collections. Let's move to the next slide, which is not going to the next slide. Okay, why is it going to the next slide? There we go. Thank you. We're going to explore such topics as organizing your physical collections before digitization, the importance of selection and curation, provenance and copyright, and thinking about your digital collections within the vast number of collections already out there in the digital universe. We will also, take a look at some examples of some really well-curated collections. We're going to take a look at some space junk, as I like to call it. And then, we'll take a look at our, kind of our collections and the hosted collections. And so, it is, as it says, a long road to travel. I mean, that's the whole point of the visual, is it's like, not only you're going to have to travel down that road, you're going to have to go up over that mountain down there and hopefully down the other side and probably onto some other mountain to get to, the end. But there's a lot of things to consider when you are selecting materials that we can talk about. So we'll move on to the next slide. There we go. Okay, before you get started doing any kind of digitization, before you even get a scanner, before you even think about money, can we afford to do this? You need to think about what you've got. So you need to get organized. So these are some of the things that Brittany and I kind of came up with, kind of starting points for you to think about.
Can you talk a little bit about just
Sure.
organization in general and what I mean by that?
Yeah.
So as a manuscripts librarian, I deal with the primary source material, essentially, so your letters, diaries, photographs, if you have any audio and moving images, that kind of thing, things that aren't traditional library materials such as books or periodicals. So some mistakes I've seen some folks make, especially if they're not used to handling these kinds of materials, is that they try to just jump into the digitization stage before, scanning, before they've even got some kind of guide or some kind of organizational scheme. And I'm like, it is so much more work if you do it that way, because you have to go back and try to put everything together if it's all, disordered and for example, let's say you've got a series of photographs, but they're all separated and they're just thrown in a box. Please don't do that. Don't just start scanning. Please organize everything before you go. Get some folders, put a guide together. We call them, finding aids, but whatever you need for your library or institution, just so that you know what you have and you can kind of curate before you put everything up, in case you have duplicates, but you don't realize it because you're so far into it. So please, 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 just like you would catalog your books before they would go out into the universe for your patrons to use, organize your material before you start digitization. So.
Right, and I will also tag on, not too long ago, there was on the list here, this kind of conversation going on about vertical files, clipping files, pamphlet files. Somebody had, I think, 6 file cabinets full. And well, hopefully, if if it's like a pamphlet file or a clippings file, it already has some organization to it. But that's not always the case with archival materials. You may get a box of stuff and it may be a hodgepodge and not even. Some aspects are hopefully already organized, but not from an archival point of view, more from the library point of view. So yeah, that's one thing to really think about. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the considerations of things. And I know you came up with some of these, so I'll let you address the used and requested frequently.
So when I'm asking you to consider something, consider whether or not it should be digitized at all. We don't have all the space, we don't have all the money. So you have to kind of consider your highlights, and it would take a really long time to digitize everything, even if you had all the funding in the world. So you need to start thinking about what's a priority and what's not. And so these can help you kind of frame whether things are priorities for digitization for your users, before you just grab random things and scan them. Right. So consider whether something is used or requested frequently. We have some collections that we get requested a lot, and some of our people travel from quite far distances to view our material for weeks at a time. So from our point of view, if we can save them a bit of a trip and reduce some of the handling of that, that's good for us. So yeah,
we have a lot of maps that we have. They need to have conservation work done on them, but as more handling they get, the worse they actually get. They kind of start to break down and things like that. So that's a good example from the Indiana division, our maps.
And that relates to number 4. So we'll get more into that in a minute.
Yes. Is it available online already? Oh my goodness. Internet. I remember when, kind of the start of digital collections. I remember I was working at the Indianapolis Public Library, and Pam Swagner, our cataloger, came to me and said, we want to digitize some stuff that's in the Indianapolis room. And I'm like, digitize? What is that? So we have come a long way in the past, 15 to 20 years. There's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of places to put things beyond such, like Content DM or, Omeka or some of those other content management systems. Internet archives just bloomed and blossomed over the past several years. HathiTrust, Google Books was kind of the leader to begin with, and I think they've kind of trailed off a little bit, and the others. Library of Congress, I've noticed, has started putting things up as well. Like I went looking for a county history. We were debating about whether to keep our county histories in our digital collections, and I'm like, oh, Library of Congress is starting to do a lot of stuff as well. So is it available online already? So if you've got some stuff in your collection, like if you've got some, bigger items like state documents, say here in Indiana, you've got some state documents that are older, and you're like, should we digitize these? Are people going to use those? You want to definitely check online first before you just start, scanning. You want to definitely see what's already out there. Because it's possible. I've noticed on a few things that I've done in the past, I'm like, oops, somebody else has already done this. Well, there's 2 copies out there now. So, but that's okay. I mean, it's not like I did a ton of things that, was basically, overlapping with other collections, but those are things you want to think about.
Yes, because if someone else has done the work, you don't necessarily need to, especially if it's open and publicly accessible, easily findable online. So just consider. And the ones we mentioned are more for published material, like the periodicals and the books that are out of copyright. But yeah, there could also be some things in your more, I don't know, unique collections that could have been done somewhere, especially if they are somewhat published, like a broadside, for example.
I know for some of our, we did some company employee newsletters here, and I noticed that one of the digital collections up north in northern Indiana, southern Michigan, they had already done some. So what I did instead is I went in and saw what they had already done, and I added by doing other copies that they hadn't done. So I added a few years to kind of, follow up with what they had already done. So, all righty.
So the next one's public interest. Is there going to be a lot of public interest in something in your collection? For example, anniversaries are the most common. So during the World War I centennial, we created a digital collection for that, which we will show you in a bit, I believe. And yeah, so just because we knew there was going to be a lot of people doing projects or work related to that, that's when, public interest gets, we had like such a number right in a row. There was the Civil War sesquicentennial, followed by World War I with some overlap. And then there was the women's suffrage, the 19th Amendment in, 2020. Plus, Indianapolis had one, but it was during COVID, so we didn't get to do as much.
No, we didn't do much of that as much.
Yeah, so it's good to kind of keep those things in mind. Or if you have something more local that, is going to be big, like maybe you're celebrating some big thing in your town, like maybe it's your town's 200th or something, then that's a good time to start looking at some of your local material and whether that should, go online.
And planning is not, we've already started talking between us about World War II. Yeah. And that's far away, but but the other thing is, we're coming up on 2029. And if you all remember 100 years ago in 1929, if you know your history, the start of the Great Depression. So we've already started looking at, I have started looking at materials that I could do that's local, that relate to the 1930s and the WPA and all that good stuff. So, all righty. So the other thing I wanted to tag on there, you also might look and see what movies are coming out, that kind of stuff, what books are coming out that might generate some kind of interest. You never know when a movie is going to come out and be very popular. That might be some historical thing, but
and I think the public librarians have a better pulse on that.
Yeah, they do. We do. We just want
to programming related to things that are of interest.
Yeah, because you want to be friends with your public librarian. So. Okay, I'll let you talk a little bit about condition.
So we touched a little bit on this condition. If you have things that are fragile and that every time you handle them, say like you have a special newspaper or edition of a newspaper and it wasn't printed on the best paper, right? It's very thick, it's crumbling. You don't want people to keep handling that. It's better to, get that scanned and get that up. And then if people ask about it, you can try directing them to that link in a reference question as opposed to having them come in person and handle it. So that's fragility is one of the big ones. Obsolescence is another one. If you have, for example, some oral histories that are on some magnetic tape, those things will not last forever. And so you might want to try to get those sent that out to a vendor unless
Your
you can do it
VHS
in-house.
tapes. I got some of those at home.
Yes, so it's a good idea to be thinking about the fact that also your equipment that you would need, or even software now, is not permanent. So you need to start thinking about, is it going to get more expensive? Should I just do this now? And it probably will get more expensive as time goes on.
Yeah.
So better to do it now if you can.
Yeah, when you were talking about the newspapers, it made me think, I know Megan had mentioned somebody from Fort Branch. I assume that's Fort Branch, Indiana. I could be wrong. There might be a Fort Branch somewhere else, but Dave, our newspaper librarian, has been doing some digitization. He did some Fort Branch newspapers. He did the best he could to get them online. I think some of them were actually broken into 4 pieces. So when you look at it online, you can see, how fragile they were, because you can tell how they've been folded up. And then so when he's laying them out, there's like 4. It may not have been Fort Branch, it may be on another newspaper, but it was just a hot mess. But he actually did it and he got it done. So
Better before it completely falls apart.
before it's totally gone.
The other thing is it unique, right? We talked about things that are duplicates. Published
Right.
materials usually are not unique unless there weren't a lot of copies to begin with. Maybe you have one of the only ones remaining. And so that is a good reason to digitize if it's unique and it's, within the context of all these other, things.
And I want to tie that in with, we were just talking about newspapers and uniqueness. I know that I have come across clippings in our clippings files from newspapers that we can't find anyplace else. And so that clipping is out of a newspaper that maybe doesn't exist anymore, which is kind of interesting. So, even though we kind of say don't do newspapers sometimes, it's like you need to take that step to see if they're actually digitized somewhere. That's a good example.
That's a lot of work to try to.
It is a lot of work,
but
if you've got a ton of clippings, yeah, it can be kind of important. Last but not least, provenance, and most importantly, oh my gosh, copyright. Copyright is very important. Anything before 1929, I think are we up to 28 or 29?
30 yet?
We might be at 30, somewhere right around there. Anything that's before that time, you're pretty good to go. You can probably digitize it without much problem. It's when you get past the copyright date, we're just going to say it's 1930 since we don't know what it is. Don't quote us on that. In a couple of years, it'll be 1930. So sometime soon it will be 1930. So anything between 1930 and 78?
78, there is some wiggle room. There were much more specific regulations, like you actually had to register your material with the Copyright Office and you had to keep renewing it and you had to have a copyright notice, but there's some differences in there where the laws were changing. So that's where it gets trickier. There used to be something called the public domain slider or something similar titled, and it was with on the ALA website, but I'm not sure. The last time I tried to use it, it wasn't functional. So it was very nice for us visual folks. But if not, I know that Cornell always keeps an up-to-date guide on what's in and out of copyright. And the 1930 thing is for published material. I just want to emphasize that. So unpublished for me, you have to think more about the person who created it or the family or the organization, because those rules are different if it wasn't a published thing. So some photographs were not treated like published material. They were not filed. They didn't file with the Copyright Office, U.S. Copyright Office. And so that's where things get trickier. Or like if someone wrote a letter, what's the copyright on that? And it's usually still the life of the author and plus 70 years. So like when they die, 70 years after their death date is when it will be out of copyright. If you do not know the creator, you have to add 120 years to the date of creation. So that's when it'll come out of copyright. It gets tricky.
Yeah, it gets tricky.
Very tricky.
I remember when I first started with digital collections, I mean, copyright was massive. I mean, we were looking for, even on a postcard, trying to find. Now there's I've kind of noticed over the past 20 years, it's kind of loosened up where it's like, throw it up there and let the copyright owner come and tell you to take it down.
Right. So they have to send you a cease and desist letter. So just be aware, though, there is some risk involved. If you put things up that are, older, I think that's probably safe, but there could be a legal challenge. So you have to take that into consideration. Libraries don't need more, or cultural institutions do not need more legal challenges unless, you and your institution are willing to risk something.
Yeah, think about who created it. I mean, if you go into your clippings file or your article file, or your pamphlet file, and you find a Mickey Mouse comic book from like 1965 or something right there. Mickey Mouse, Disney, just put it back in there and pretend you don't know it's there and let it go.
They can come to the library
and look at it. You can use it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like, think about the companies that are still around. General Motors. I did some newsletters from General Motors companies here in Anderson. And I'm like, you know what, we're going to do some of these. We'll put them up. And then I'll let General Motors call me up and tell me to take them down. And they may be like, hey, thank you, do more of them. I mean, you never know. It's kind of, but it is one of those things. It's like, use some, judgment there. Yeah. So, okay, we've got some examples. At this time, we'll let you put some questions in. So, Megan, if you notice any questions come in, and we're going to, yes.
We do have a few questions.
Okay.
Joan Bruckman asked if there is a guide for organization that you'll be able to share.
It kind of just depends on what you have and your resources. So if you want to email me directly, I can talk. Are we talking more like primary source material?
Is she asking like, do we have the way we organize, or is she wanting?
I am not.
You know what? Tell her, well, you can email us and we can get a conversation going between the three of us. Because, when I organize, if you're asking, like, for example, how I organize my stuff, when I first started, I kind of had this, I was kind of lucky. I had kind of a raw collection to kind of begin with. And over the years, I really kind of geared it towards
digital or physical?
Digital, well, physical. And then as I organize stuff that I pull out of the collection that I want to digitize, I think about one of the things I do, for example, I want to make sure that our digital collections, that all 92 counties are counted for. So that in our collection, there is something for every county in our digital collections. And I've done that in a couple of the maps and the Indiana Historic Print Collection. So that's one of the things I think about when I am organizing to plan to digitize. What am I missing? So I literally have a map on my wall with lots of blue crayon dots on it, and it shows me where I have not digitized actually. So anytime I would digitize something, I put a dot on a city or something like that. So if that's kind of what you're thinking about.
If the question is more about how do you physically organize material, especially if it's not published material and it's more of your sort of special collections, then talk to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, we can. That's a good question.
Like a little bit more, because sometimes it really does depend. I can't just say like, you should definitely do it this way because your collection is unique to your institution. And your, whether or not you can get, say, acid-free boxes and folders versus something else is, all dependent on that. So.
That's good to know. And I will be posting at the end of this webinar our emails. So, John, you will be able to email Chris and Brittany. I do have one more. Sue Carmichael asked, you have a large file on the Big Four Railroad. Can we link our website directly to that file? The Big Four ran through our community.
So are we saying that we have like an item on there about that in our collections, or?
That's another one. Email us.
Yeah.
Yeah, email us on that one. That will help us figure out. Yeah, linking things. I do it all the time in our digital collections. I have links to tons of stuff in Internet Archives.
And then you can also put, for your digital collection landing pages, that's a great place to put links to outside things. So if you have things in different collections of your own or in other institutions that are related to what's in there, that's if that's about your topic, that's a good spot to put that stuff. Just to connect it all together.
I am taking notes on the questions, so we may not be able to answer them right off the top, but we will be happy to help answer those. So, can everybody see our Indiana State Library digital collections now? Megan, is that good?
Yes, I can see it.
Good. Okay, good. So yeah, we wanted to point out some examples. This Will Hayes collection is a good example of a collection that was used quite extensively. And you can speak more to this one since you got a grant. You guys got a grant.
We got a lot of requests, and we would have researchers come spend weeks with us to look in this, because Will Hayes was the president of the Motion Pictures Producers and oh, MMPDA and Distributors Association.
Yeah.
Back before they shortened their acronym. And so he was the president from 1922 to 45. And so there was just tons of interest in the film industry. He's got really great material, just, that he produced in his work. For example, there's things related to Carol Lombard's death right after she was here for the Bond rally in 1942 here in Indianapolis. And she died, if you're not familiar with this, her plane hit like the Sierra Mountains, crashed in the Sierra.
Yes, it crashed.
And it was like the day after she left. And there's like condolence letters, and like Will Hayes was here with her in Indianapolis. And so, and then there's like a telegram from Clark Gable, like, which is her husband. So just there's a lot of interesting things in there. Then the Hayes Code is really what he's known for, which is this censorship of movies. And so we get a lot of interest in that, or just connections, because he had a lot of political connections because he was Warren Harding's.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, there was, Warren Harding was,
Yeah.
Lots of correspondence.
There's loads of things. So we didn't put up the whole collection. But it took us 2 years and 2 assistants doing this, like full-time scanning and putting these online to get up just this chunk of the collection, which is the part that's of most interest to our researchers. Right. So this way, we don't have to have quite so many people, it's traveling so expensive these days when you're coming from England or across the country for weeks and staying in a hotel. So this just makes it a lot easier for people to use.
Yeah, World War I was one that we started while I was here, when I started early on. This is an example of one that it relates to that public anniversary. And we still, we still add things to this every once in a while, add some stuff in. But this is an example of how, pulling together materials about a specific topic, that we've done here. And then what was our other one? Oh, the Miami treaties. This is an example of stuff you don't want people to, handle too often. Exactly. Let's bring up the other one because it actually shows.
They're not in the greatest of condition because they're from, one of them's from like 1748.
Look how.
The U.S. so this treaty is actually with the British. And we found them rolled up in our cage here in Manuscripts. And we're like, we need to flatten these and get them digitized and make them available so that we don't have to. We do sometimes bring them out for like specific events or if someone needs to research a little more closely, but for the average person, this is, sufficient.
Right.
There's also a facsimile or a photostat of this so you can see it in more detail because it is quite faded.
Yeah,
and I just love the turtles.
Yeah, you can see the movements on how, so you can see the difference. So, but talk about something that you've got that's pretty rare. So now we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on, and we'll always have time for other questions too. So let's move to the next slide. I got to share the PowerPoint first. There we go. Okay, Megan, do you see the PowerPoint?
I do.
Okay, great. Okay, next slide, please.
It's something where you almost have to like highlight it again and then click it. I don't know.
There is one quick question that I do have, just real quick, from Kelly Jordan. She asks, what platform are you using for your collection?
We use Content DM, which is provided by OCLC. It's pretty, commonly used for folks that don't have a ton of money to build their own, which a lot of university systems have done, the big ones. But
the state archives just got something else. I can't remember what the name of it is.
Products out there, and so there's definitely
there's some of what they call the out of the box ones, and then there's ones like Omeka, which is an online one that you can go in and kind of mess around with. You can subscribe to it. It's real cheap
to start.
It's a start, and you have to have you have to kind of be tech savvy. That's a whole other conversation. There is what's out there. So, okay, let's move on to let's check our time. Let's move on to the next leg of your journey, and now you're going to visualize your digital collection. So, if you've got a lot of materials you're looking at these file cabinets full of clippings or pamphlets, and you've organized and you figured out what you want to do and how you want to do things, then this is where you can start thinking about, now you're inching closer down the road to actually maybe getting a digital collections going. So one of the first things is, what is the purpose of your digital collection and who is the intended audience? Is it school groups? Is it genealogists? Is it hobbyists? Is it for local? Yeah, serious researchers. I know one of the things, like the Will Hayes is, such a collection that's, very, serious focused. People are, that's the serious researchers. I try to do a little bit of everything out of the Indiana collection. We did a ton of stuff on the state parks. We have such a rich state parks history here in Indiana that I did a ton of stuff for them. So intended audience was the people who are interested in the state parks.
Yeah, some of their history and how they've changed, or if they've added on over the years, or
right.
how they were.
Keep expanding that area to include other areas as well from DNR. Okay, I'll let you take the next one.
Well, like, again, it kind of ties to the first one. Like, what's your goal or your focus for this collection, and how it's going to be used? It's kind of like, it almost needs to. Did you have something specific about focus we were talking about yesterday?
Oh no, we were talking about it, and then we were talking like, I think along the lines of like, focusing on specific parts of your collection. Because one of the things, and I don't know if we did this in this slide or the other, you don't have to digitize everything, so you want to focus on what you've got that is so unique. Then adding up more photos of Abraham Lincoln or other historical figures. It's like, focus on the things that are, very important in your collection.
Right. Like, drill down a bit and be like, just think, how it's going to be used. I try to think of that when I'm creating finding aids. It's like, okay, if I was the user, what would be useful to me when I try to go in and create those, or metadata in my digital collections too.
And of course, is it subject or format based? For example, World War I versus a collection of photographs of just, local photos of families or whatever.
Like, we have some format based ones that are, our photograph collections. And so, of course, it's not everything in our photo collections by any means. It's not even close, but it is things that we've scanned. Sometimes we'll put things up that we've had requests for, and so we've already scanned it, and we're like, well.
And I have done the opposite, where somebody will say, I need this church history. And I'm like, oh, that'll contribute to our digital collections. Yeah. So I go ahead and just digitize it, put it up, and then send them a link and say, here it is. It's already in our digital collections. The magic of digitization.
So there's, some of that. We also have broadside collections, oral histories, etc. That's for manuscripts. We have a small manuscripts collection to put our small things, because the large ones, as you can see from Will Hayes, need their own sometimes, because they're enormous, even when you're uploading them as folders. And then subject, we have some others, like the Open Spaces Historic Places, which has a lot of the state park material, and just other things like that, just historic sites, or just
that continues. And that kind of ties into the next one, which just continues to grow. That collection is growing because I've been adding other stuff from DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, because one of the things I do focus on, since we're the state library, I focus on state documents, and all the state parks have state documents that go with them. And I'm talking about the published stuff. I'm not talking about stuff that might be at the archives, where all the planning documents and that. So, but then I'm also doing some stuff on nature reserves. I've started doing some of the state historic sites. Like I just did the territorial capital down in
was it Corydon?
I think it was Corydon. And then I've got some stuff laying out for Vincennes, because George Rogers Clark, his anniversary is coming up. There's an anniversary. I thought of that the other day, and I was like, we should, which probably was like 3 months ago. I thought, hey, we should pull some stuff out about that and do that. So your collection will continue to grow if you've got, or if maybe it doesn't. Maybe you've got 6 folders full of stuff that you want to do, and that's it. And that may be all you ever do.
Or it was for a specific project. Maybe you partnered with a local organization to do a specific, set of materials, or what have you, to capture something. And
the Indianapolis Public Library is a good example of that, because they've done a lot of outreach for specific organizations. And I suspect a lot of those have endings as opposed to they'll keep adding to it. So
Will Hayes is one we're not going to add more to, right? We put as much in as we want to put in.
yeah, it's kind of, you know, some of our, like our map collection is kind of slowing down as well. We were talking about that not too long ago in the Indiana division about just slowing down our map collection and not really adding a lot more in there for a while. So, and then of course do some exploration. Well, what we mean by that is go out online and see what else is, you know, who else has done what. Indiana Memory is a great place to look because there's all these, you know, it's kind of all the collections conglomerated together from all the institutions. I think other states have done that. North Carolina has a ton. They have a huge digitization.
Montana,
Yeah.
there's Calisphere in California, which is enormous, and it encompasses pretty much most organizations in the state.
So, okay, let's take a look at some examples. Let's go back and see if we can, we're going to share back to here. Okay, so this one, let's see, why did we have this one?
That was because that's where the
oh, that's where the treaties are. Okay, well, we're going to get rid of that. This is a good example, Avon High School. This is a very, you know, has a very specific goal. They did their high school yearbooks. You can see that they've done them by years. Huh? Okay, we'll go to browse. Okay. Well, that was the landing page. I wanted to show that as well. But so, yeah, I mean, Avon High School had a very specific goal. We're going to put up our yearbooks. That is a very good, focused collection. Who is it intended for? The alumni, probably. Is probably the number one, and genealogist would probably be the number two. So, you know, they've got their yearbooks up here. Looks like they got 5 pages worth. So that's a good one. And then I don't know why this is here. So I don't see our other example of what we were looking at. So we'll just go with that one. Open spaces, historic places versus the broadsides. We kind of touched on them. So
the difference between a subject-based collection and one that's a little bit more format-based.
Right. A lot of our hosted collections, if you see us as hosted collections, these are collections that we've had LSTA grants for in the past for institutions who can't really host collections themselves. We're able to host them here. But a lot of those hosted collections are very focused. And this is just one example, but there's lots of historical societies. I'm trying to think of public libraries who have done photographs. I know Brownsburg has done a bunch of photographs in their collection. What was the other one we were talking about the other day? I can't remember. We were talking about so many, we had so many to choose from. We were like overwhelmed kind of, but they're all very specific focus. So this is from Indiana Memory. So if you go into there, you'll see lots of ones that are very specific. You know, if you really want to see some specific ones, go to IU Indy now, or formerly IUPY, and look up their digital collections. Talk about some very focused and specific collections. So, okay, so let's go back to the slideshow. See if we can get it to advance.
Any questions?
Oh, questions at this point. Yes, Megan. Anything?
Yes, I do have some questions. Talking about format, what format do you use for scanning?
So file formats? We tend to scan uncompressed TIFF files for our own master, or we call them preservation files, but some people call them master files. So then you can generate copies from those that are smaller that you then put online. So we do JPEGs for our access copies when we're uploading, and compression is okay. My rule of thumb is if you can read it. So basically, if you want to know if your thing is too compressed, too small, or if it hasn't been scanned at a high enough DPI or PPI, depending on what you're using, which is dots per inch if you're talking about printing, and then pixels per inch. They're pretty close, so we almost use them interchangeably in terms of how many. So the smaller something is, the higher your PPI needs to be, because so if it's a 35 millimeter slide, it needs to be at least 1200 PPI to scan it at, because you're taking something tiny that's like an inch wide and blowing it up so that you can see all the detail, versus a giant map right? You might only need 300 PPI for that. And because you can see all the detail because it's so large, right? So that's per inch, how many pixels per inch. So my rule of thumb is to open your image and then zoom in. As it starts getting more pixelated, that's where you're like, okay, this isn't enough. I need to go back and rescan this higher, or I need to generate a new JPEG that is a little bit higher in resolution so that they can see it better when they zoom in.
Yeah, I'm trying to get one to come up that we can zoom into, but it seems to be taking forever. But yeah, you can scroll in and see how well the image is taking too long. But you can do that with a lot of things. So, you can open this up. I was trying to think of another example. Let's see if there's another, just something we recently uploaded that may be quicker. Let's take a look at the Sullivan County thing and see, maybe it will come up quicker. There we go. So yeah, so then when you start zooming in, so you can see this was at this is a JPEG at 400 DPI. So you can see.
Load your tips. It's going to take.
Oh gosh, no.
And that costs a lot of money. So
yeah, so yeah, don't do your tips. So do your okay. So do your JPEG. So.
Thank you. There's, let's see, from Joan Hostetler. How do you track or mark what you've already digitized, especially if you are selecting only part of a collection to digitize?
For you guys, I don't know about you, but I can tell you how we do it for us in the Indiana division. It goes in the catalog. I send a email every month to Jocelyn, our cataloger, with this long list of links, because I keep a spreadsheet of everything I've digitized. She takes those links and ties them into our catalog. So if you do a catalog search for, Indiana, or something in our collection, in our catalog, you'll find the link to the item in the digital collections. So the other thing is, when I leave, nobody's going to know probably what got digitized without going through all the digital collections. There's kind of that part
without
there.
looking in the digital collections itself.
Right.
So
you got to look in the digital.
Sure, you're like, okay, has this been uploaded yet? Then you could search your digital collection and see if it's there or not. For my, I kind of keep an idea of what's being digitized, especially now that it's just me and Victoria in our division. But some of the ways I do that is by designating where they are in our internal server. Like we have a designated digital collections drive in our servers that is where we place that. And it's organized by division. And then within that, we organize it by how our collections are broke down physically so that I always know where to look. If I have L511, I can go look in the permanent folders that say manuscripts, then large collections, L511. Is there anything here? And I can check and see, and it's all organized how it's physically organized. And so I can kind of see, oh, we didn't do box 2, and a lot of times we'll leave a note that says why, like a rationale, or it could just be that we did it because of patron requests, right? And so we're just saving those files so that we don't redo our work. Because it's a lot of work.
Yeah, so I rely on my spreadsheet a lot, especially if I'm adding. So like that Sullivan County item that you just looked at, or we just showed, that was probably like number 7 or 8. And I keep that spreadsheet so I can go in and see anything that I've done. So that way, if I add something on, I can just tack that on to the next number. And it's kind of a technical, organizational, behind the scenes thing.
We also keep a digital preservation spreadsheet where we'll put in things that are permanently added. We all have working files folders, and those things are not in yet. They're not permanently added to what we're keeping. And so you have to kind of go through that, make sure it gets added to the spreadsheet. There's just a system how we do it. But since it's him and me doing our own divisions, we kind of have control over that. If you have more hands working in your kitchen, then you're going to have to find another way to track that. But spreadsheets kind of are the way to do that.
Okay, do we see the PowerPoint again? Because let's head on to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay, select and curate. We've got some tips and tricks for you to think about. Digital collections are not free. As I just heard Jones Hostetler asking a question, she can probably attest to that too, because she hosts Indiana Memory or Indiana Album. Sorry, almost got the wrong one. But you know, our digital collections are not free. Now they can be cheap. You can find some cheap stuff and you know, options. Internet Archive is actually a free venue, but you still have to put all the work behind it. So,
and they are still paying. So that's the thing, is like Internet Archive may eventually have to change their model, right? Nothing is set in stone.
Right. So
hopefully they can keep it going through public funding, but there may come a day when we have to start charging to put things online because they are paying for it. Whether you're paying for it, they are.
Yeah, all of our digital collections, you know, the hosted ones that we have been done through LSTA grant monies. And we take on the cost here at the state library to keep those up. So, so yeah, and then storage space is expensive, which is why JPEGs go into our digital collections as opposed to TIFFs, because they're smaller, they take up less space, and then we can maximize the use of that space. And you know what? The other thing of it is you can't digitize everything, and nor should you.
There's no time, right? Even if you had your full-time job was digitization, it would take you so long to, especially for us, like it would take decades, possibly even a century, to get through every single piece of paper. Right?
Yeah, I pull stuff out from the collection from the Indiana division, and I look at it, I evaluate, and some stuff I throw right back and say, we're not doing that part. And I've done my diligence, and it's, even though it's not anywhere else out there, but it's really not contributing much, and I throw that stuff back. So, and
it's like, of course, people can still contact us if, for example, we don't have something online that they we still have reference questions. There's still access to the material, but it might not be in the digital collections.
Right. So, structure and organization, I have no idea what we were thinking about there. Do you remember?
Think about how you're organizing your what you put online, right? So, for example, we put Will Hayes up folder by folder, because if we tried to do item level description for every single telegram and letter and pamphlet and photograph in that collection, it would have taken us a decade, right? Like to describe every single one. Whereas it took us 2 years to scan and put it online at a folder level, because you describe it at the folder level. We did run OCR as much as we could, but anybody who's used optical character recognition knows that it's only about 70% accurate, and that's if you have like perfect scenarios, right? Like there's no weird line breaks or folds or like other markings on the paper that your software is recognizing as periods or whatever things, when it's really just an ink dot. So yeah, that's how we kind of tried to make each page as accessible as possible. But
yeah, I know for the nice thing about the Indiana division stuff is like, I can't really describe this much fuller because it's a pamphlet about this or that, and that's the name of the pamphlet. So that's where it becomes easier for me, as opposed to archival materials where you've got a photograph and you really have to come up with a description for that photograph, because it does not tell you what it is.
Especially if you want to keep ADA compliant, right? Because that text is what the readers will use to describe to people who are blind or visually impaired, right? So it's good to be, especially with visual material, graphic material like broadside or artwork or photographs, to be as descriptive as you can in that, which we are getting a little sidetracked about structured organization.
Yeah, so.
But like you can do things at the item level. Our photograph collections are largely item level, but we also do have folders where they're about a specific topic or from a specific person. Like the small photograph collection is just together, and you'd have to click on it to open it up and see each page.
Yeah, we got an example of that. So
we'll show you later how those look.
Quality control is boring, but crucial. Duplicates are not cool. Wonky scanning is not cool. Blurry images, and we have some examples of those. So we'll leave that for just a moment and come back to it. And then, when you're getting ready, so let's say you've got your stuff, you've laid it all out, you've looked at everything you've got, you've weeded out the part that you don't want to do, and you're focusing on your great collection of materials, and you're ready to go. At that point in time, that's when you start finding funding, and that's when you start finding someplace to put it. Where are we going to actually put it? Can we afford to do this? And you've answered all that question before you actually, put the collection up, making sure you got a ton of stuff scanned and ready to go into the collection. So you've got, to get to that hoop right there, you've got a lot of other hoops to go through. But that is one thing that we always want to point out. When you're curating, you can also curate on your landing page and make sure you got a good number of items in there to start. Don't scan 2 things, put them up, and then we'll add a few more things, because a lot of, life can get in the way and you may never get back to it. So you want to have a good number of collections. So
yes, especially if it's not a concise project, right? If it's not something that has a beginning and an end, and you're planning to keep adding material to it over time, yeah. Before you publish it and make it public, make sure you have changed your create description for a landing page here, like filler text. Get rid of that, put your actual description in, and make sure you've got, our rule of thumb is like 25 to 50 is a good place. But if you don't have that much, that's fine. Just as long as it's more than 1 or 2 items. So when people go in there and go, oh,
other options for that kind of stuff as well. So, that's kind of the very, last part of this kind of select and curate, but do bear in mind that there's lots between that landing page, the number of items to get to for a collection that you got to get to first, like that finances, you got to answer all that other stuff.
Yeah, that's not really what
that's not, we just kind of threw that in there as kind of a last thing. So we do want to show you some examples of there's my mouse. I already did. Megan, I am showing the digital collections, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we were talking about, let me move this out of the way. We were talking about, make sure you're not doing stuff that, has already been done out there. So we're going to give this a second to load. Come on, load. So I did a general search for our good friend, Abraham Lincoln. Now, of course, he shows up in a lot of different places, the Nancy Hanks Lincoln Historic Site. But this is an example of what I consider, you really want to think about and not contributing to the space junk, I guess you might say. See this image like right here, all these images of Abraham Lincoln, this one over here, these 2. You can see those anywhere. I'm not going to open up to see what collection it's in, but it's that kind of stuff that does a picture of Abraham Lincoln that you can do a Google search for really contribute to your digital collection. And there was another one. Maybe it does.
Like this is entirely just a collection about Abraham Lincoln material from maybe a specific organization, like the
Lincoln Foundation up in Fort Wayne or something like that. Or
could make sense.
If Lincoln came through your town, and you've got something unique about it. Or, if somebody drew a picture of him and he saw him and they're like, oh, I came back to, Warren County and, they live in the Williamsport or whatever. And they're like, wow, we saw Abraham Lincoln. He came here and here's some sketches that I did, that somebody did in their diary or they talk about. That's one thing. But, like these images are all so basic.
Well, you can see them. Duplicate image that has an original somewhere else or that's already publicly available and easy to find. Then you don't necessarily need to include it.
Yeah, so that's something to think about.
Consider it.
Yeah, so just something, I saw some for Martin Luther King. I'm like, there are tons of images out there. So
like think about that uniqueness. Think about what you're adding to the cumulative material out there and openly available about.
Right. Talking about not doing everything. These are Bible records from our friends down in the genealogy division here. They only did the actual pages of, they didn't do the entire Bible, in other words. Oh my goodness, do not take on digitizing the Bible. I mean,
it's so free available everywhere.
Everywhere. You may be looking, oh, we've got this great Bible, but it has tons of family stuff in it. Just do the family stuff. Trust me, the Bible, the rest of it will be okay. It's that kind of thing to think about. Yes.
Let's make a note. If you do not choose to do an entire item from cover to cover, then you need to state that somewhere in your metadata that says
Right.
no, that says only like a blank pages were not scanned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that they're aware this isn't the complete item. This is just the material it has writing on it. I'll be real with you. I mean, you're supposed to, in terms of like the
Well, that's
professional,
like,
like ideal of digitization where you do it the entire object, but sometimes it's just not worth it for your, well, your
and your
specific
money, yeah.
instance.
And that
And yeah,
goes back to the storage space that takes up.
you
Yeah.
have a ledger that has only 8 pages that were used in it, and the rest of it is all blank. Like, and there's 300 pages in this ledger. I'm not scanning every blank page. I'll be real with you, because I'm thinking about the user access. If they want to see the full thing, they can come in, or they can request to have those scanned with fees. That's what we're putting in to do that. But you got to kind of weigh your resources, which is a common thing in libraries and cultural institutions, because money does not grow on the trees.
Nope. And in this day and age, yes, it's got even kind of crucial now at the moment. So this is another one of those item level items. Just another example, like you said, with Will Hayes. This is where we did a group of materials. So these are CCC camp photographs, and you can group them together like on a record in a digital collections like that. So that's an example of that. What were we talking about here? Oh no, we got to go on to the blurry one. Okay, this is just bad quality control. We're going to pick on our friends at the DNR. I hope they don't mind. I'm doing lots of their stuff. So, but take a look at this image. This helps absolutely no one. I almost want to call them up on the telephone and go, can we borrow those and we'll make you some really nice copies to put them up. This is an example of really just, it looks like somebody took it with their phone. It's blurry. You can't even read it. I don't even know what it is. I'm like, well, I do kind of know what it is. I think it's Gus Grissom's
and you can't read
Purdue University. I mean, this just does not help at all. And in this day and age, but this is the kind of thing when I say space junk. This is something that it just isn't going to be helpful.
So on quality control, because we didn't spend much time on it, you need to look at all your scans, right? So it's annoying. It's to flip through a whole big long thing, but you need to look at that, and if you can, compare it to your physical original, because every time I scan something enormous, whether it's me or someone else or whoever, there's almost always a duplicate page, like where some page has been scanned twice, and you want to get rid of that duplicate. You may have to fiddle with your file naming because of that, which is a big pain, but you have to do it.
Yes.
Or something's been missed. So because you get in the zone scanning and you get distracted for 1 second and you don't realize that you turn the page and 2 are sticking together, right?
Right.
You have to make sure and like that you got the full image. Please include a gutter so we know it's the entire image. This one has a gutter, but it's not a pretty gutter. Like this, we need to see the edges if possible, because then we know it's the full image of the object. And straighten it. You can do that in Photoshop or other photo editors pretty easily. So
yeah, that's kind of when you've gotten to the digitization point. So yeah, things to think about when you're doing a lot of this. So as Walt has told us here, the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So we're you can see the PowerPoint again, I hope. So yeah, there's that long road ahead of you. There's the mountains in the background, and thank you. Here's our emails. Any more questions? Megan, back to you. Questions?
Let's see, just real quick. I know we're at 11, but I do have one here from Bethany Gray. They asked, are there copyright issues if we create an index for a book and post it online to our local history website? We have gone through many of our major local history books, and any that didn't have indexes, we created them. Thanks to dedicated volunteers, we have both name indexes and everything else like business, church, organization, places, etc. indexes created.
No, there's no copyright with that, because we do indexes all the time. We have in our Indiana Legacy, we've got indexes for tons of stuff, periodicals, I can't think of what else we've got. We're doing one, well, that's the one we're working on now is periodicals, biographical index. Those indexes, there's no copyright issue with those whatsoever.
Copyright is to protect intellectual property by the creator, right?
Right.
Typically because they want to make some money off of their art or their, whatever, their book or what have you. So putting that out there damages their ability to do that and make a living from their own, creation. So when it comes to indexes, you're not really using any of their intellectual property. You're just making notes of like so you can find things easily without.
So yeah, you can put that, that's something like that, you can put that up online. That would not be an issue there. That can, that will actually help quite extensively, and it doesn't really, overlap any kind of copyright issue.
All right. Well, this wraps up today's presentation. This was so helpful. I think everyone was listening intently and learning from your expertise. Thank you so much, Chris and Brittany, for presenting. And thanks to everyone for being here today. As a reminder, if you are watching in an archived recording of this presentation, information on how to obtain your LEU is in the video's description in YouTube. And this stops our recording.
Okay.